we believe high intensity interval training is the best way to condition for maximum conditioning, health, and fat loss. So the body really pulls energy from a pool of ATP, or adenosine triphosphate. Now those are big words. You don't really need to understand exactly what it means, but it's adenosine triphosphates, 3 phosphates. And really energy is produced when adenosine triphosphate gives off a phosphate and becomes adenosine diphosphate. And there are several ways it can do that. Now, right now, as you're watching this video, you're just watching a video, so your breathing is low. So all of that energy production into that pool or reservoir of energy is performed by the aerobic energy system, or by oxidation. Like the air you breathe is literally oxidizing fatty acids and providing enough energy for you to just sit and watch a video, or to sleep, or to have a conversation, or anything that is very low in intensity but long in duration. So how long does the aerobic energy system work? Forever, because when you stop breathing, you're dead. But what happens if at this very minute, while watching this video, you are attacked by a tiger? You get up and you run as fast as you can from the tiger. Immediately your breathing is going to kick up because your body has more energy needs. It's making heavy withdrawals out of that pool or out of that reservoir of energy, and it begins to run out of energy. This is because that aerobic energy system provides us with a little bit of energy for a long time, but not a lot of energy. So if I need a lot of energy, where does it come from? Well, the first process is we have maybe 6, 7, 8, 9 seconds of stored ATP in this reservoir. So as soon as I kick up the intensity, I've got a few seconds, probably 10 or less, of energy ready to be used. And immediately as that gets used and it breaks off a phosphate, the fastest way to replenish that energy is creatine phosphate comes around and says, hey man, hey adenosine diphosphate, you can have my phosphate and you can go back to becoming adenosine triphosphate. So it resynthesizes that phosphate, we get energy, and we're good. And that'll give us an additional few seconds of energy. This process is always occurring, but eventually that runs out too. And now I have to get energy from a third energy system, another anaerobic energy system. And by the way, anaerobic is not a great word because it means without oxygen, and oxygen is always present. I'm always breathing. Oxidation is always occurring. But what it's really saying is that to perform these anaerobic systems, I don't have to bring in oxygen from the outside to perform that. And that process is called glycolysis. And really, this is the system where the body burns carbohydrates or sugars as fuel, that glycolysis. It sounds like glycogen. It's literally glycogen breakdown in the muscle cell in order to provide heavy amounts of energy to the body, but it can't do it very long because there is a buildup of fatigue, potential waste products like lactate, not lactic acid, but lactate, hydrogen ions. The truth is we're not entirely sure why Usain Bolt can run a 100-meter sprint in 9.6 seconds, but he can't keep up the same speed for a 200-meter sprint or a 400-meter sprint. So we know that when we need high intensity or lots of energy withdrawals, we are utilizing that glycolytic system. But here's the case. When we do high intensity training, we are actually really maximizing all 3 energy systems. We don't stop breathing heavy when we're running really hard from the rabid tiger. We don't stop utilizing creatine phosphate when we have those high intensity needs. And certainly we're using that glycolysis. So high intensity conditioning, high intensity, will actually make all 3 energy systems more efficient. But this is not a two-way street. If you just perform low intensity, long duration aerobic exercise, that aerobic exercise can make your oxidative capacity better or make your VO2 max go up, but it will not make your glycolytic or even your CP, your creatine phosphate system, more efficient. So really only one way to train makes all 3 of those efficient, and that's what we want to do. So how do I do that practically? Well, what I'm going to do, and what we have our clients do, is high intensity interval training, or what we call HIIT. What are the most important things that I keep in mind for HIIT, knowing that most people that are watching this video channel understand that we believe strength is the most important thing to build first. So I need to be able to condition in a way that doesn't really rob me of strength. So I'm going to perform high intensity intervals with low impact and low skill exercises. So things like pushing a prowler or sled, riding an exercise bike, sprinting on an exercise bike like a Rogue Echo bike or an assault bike, maybe rowing on a C2 Concept 2 rower machine. Those all work much better than, say, running down the street, because running down the street is very high impact. And I believe this is really where CrossFit gets it wrong from a conditioning standpoint, that while they metabolically condition well, they often use high impact, high skill exercises, like using things like the snatch or the clean and jerk to perform their exercises, or sprinting out in the street, which is very high impact and probably okay if you're 23 years old, but not if you are a 42-year-old soccer mom or dad. So what we want to do is we want to pick exercises that are low skill and low impact. And we want to perform those for about 15 or 20 seconds, somewhere in that ballpark, as hard as we can possibly go. We're going to ramp up our heart rate as high as we can. And then we're going to rest until we have nearly complete recoveries. And then we're going to go again. So in the beginning, if you start that for 15 or 20 seconds of work, you're probably going to rest 2 minutes or so, somewhere in that ballpark. As you get more efficient at this type of conditioning, you will eventually be able to work into a 1-to-3 work to rest ratio. So if I work for 30 seconds, I would rest for 90 seconds. If I work for 15 seconds, I would rest for 45 seconds. That's a pretty good ratio to have, or at least to fight for, to be able to be in maximum conditioned shape. Now here's the question, why do I want to do this? Well, number one, for heart health, we know that for sedentary people, lifting heavy compound movements will increase their health. It will lower their morbidity just by lifting heavy weights. Will it be enough long term? Maybe, but if you want to get an additional health benefit, you really just have to do a little bit more if you're training 3 or 4 times a week with heavy weights. And it might just be something simple as a brisk walk for 10 minutes every day, or 3 days a week, or 4 days a week, something that gets your heart rate up enough to allow some amount of additional health increase. If I want to condition for performance, because I'm trying to make those energy systems as efficient as I possibly can, then I can do that as well, but I would probably do those high intensity interval sessions just 2 or 3 times a week, and making sure that they're always low impact, low skill, and after weight training, not before. And the last one is really with fat loss. The number one thing we can do for fat loss is eating correctly. So we have to be at an energy deficit or a calorie deficit to lose additional fat and have fat loss. But if I want to keep my metabolism stoked, the nice thing about high intensity interval training, where I do those short bursts of work and a little bit longer bursts of rest, and I do that for just 5 or 7 or 9 rounds, so you're talking about maybe 10 to 12 minutes of conditioning, it will increase my basal metabolic rate for the next 24 hours or so. So I will actually burn more energy or more fat or more calories over the next 24 hours after performing that style of training than if I had just walked on a treadmill for an hour. So this is why we believe high intensity interval training, maximizing the aerobic oxidative system, the creatine phosphate ATP system, and the glycolytic system is the best way to condition for maximum conditioning, health, and fat loss. For more information about fat loss, nutrition, conditioning, click the nutrition playlist right up there.